Okay, so this is me showing you how to make the bread that I make, okay? So all you need is bread flour, which I have in these two. I use this quick rise yeast. I use kosher salt. That's a hard thing for me to say apparently. Coarse kosher salt. And then I have 720 grams of warm water. My water is about 125 degrees. I know that because I can measure it with my kettle. So, then I use this spatula to mix it all up with, okay? So first I need 1,000 grams of flour. Okay, not quite there yet. All right.
Okay, I'll be a person. You can't let her eat any of those tomatoes. How about we just buy some? Tomatoes.
Whoops, too much.
But maybe I can have both.
Okay, so I have exactly 1,000 grams of my bread flour. And then I'm gonna mix in my 720 grams of warm water.
I need two. One for me and one for my Jesus. Big and short. One a big is for you, big one is for your child. I'll go and buy some cherry tomatoes. Are you the cherry?
And you just wanna mix this up enough to where none of your flour is dry. You just want all your flour to be wet. After I mix this up, I'm gonna let this sit for 30 minutes without putting anything else in it. It's really important to make sure you get that flour at the very bottom too, because there's still all this dry flour down here. So I just really use the spatula and kind of paddle it all down. And instead of kneading it with my hands or a mixer, I can just use the spatula and I turn it and I fold it in until it's all mixed up. Okay, so that's step one. 1,000 grams of bread flour, 720 grams of warm water. Mine is at 125 degrees. Now I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes in a warm place. So you can do that in the oven with your light on top of your fridge, or I do it in the garage, or you can do it by a window. I'm gonna cover it in plastic and put it in my garage for 30 minutes. Okay, so this is what your dough should look like after you let it sit for a while. After that, I'm gonna add 21 grams of salt. And I'm just gonna sprinkle it on top like this. And I'm gonna add 4 grams of yeast. Okay. Then 4 grams of yeast over top like that. Okay, and then I'm just gonna use the same method I used before. I'm gonna basically knead it with this, but I'm just gonna fold it into itself like this. I'm gonna do this for maybe a minute or two and just kind of roughly get all that combined, because then I'll come back in a little bit and mix it up better. Okay, and then I'm gonna flip it the best that I can. Do it again. So I'm gonna work this into a ball. And then I'm gonna let it rise again for about 2 hours. And then I'll work the dough again the same way I just did. But I'm gonna cover it back up. With my plastic wrap. And I'm gonna put it back into the garage for another 2 hours. Okay, this should be what your dough looks like now. After letting it rise for a couple hours. I'm just gonna take my spatula that I was using before and build the gluten up by doing the same motion. It should feel pretty spongy. It'll kick back to you and you'll get some air bubbles in it. And that's what you're looking for. Shape it into a ball again after I flip it. It's already expanding. So you can either let it rise for another about 4 hours, or you can separate it and put it in 2 bowls and let it rise overnight in the fridge. I do both. I do both of those methods. Sometimes I let it rise for another 4 hours and then go from there. Sometimes I cut it in half and let it rise overnight. So right now I'm gonna cut it in half and let it rise overnight. So I'm gonna grab 2 bowls. These are my rising baskets that I use. I'm just gonna sprinkle them with flour. And you can just use all-purpose flour for this. You don't have to use bread flour. I just want to make sure they're pretty well floured so that they don't stick. Okay, so pretty well floured. And then I'll flour this one. Okay, that one's well floured. Then I'll divide my dough in half with my spatula, just by cutting it. And then I'm gonna wet my hands so I can work with the dough. And I'll divide it. So your dough should be pretty warm. Okay. And it's obviously very sticky. Okay, then I'm gonna wet my hands again. Okay. Then I'm gonna get 2 tea towels or sack flour towels and cover these. And I'll let them rise overnight in the fridge. Just like that. Okay, so I'm gonna pull the bread out of the fridge now. It's been rising overnight. This is what it should look like. Just like that. And then here's the other one. Just like that. Okay, so the next thing you're gonna do is set your oven to 475 and put your Dutch oven in your oven while your oven is heating up.
No! Down!
I'm gonna let that preheat, and then I'm gonna let the Dutch oven heat up for 30 minutes after it's preheated. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna flour a surface. And then I'm gonna flip these doughs over onto my floured surface. I'm just gonna tuck them in a bit. Okay. And then I'm gonna score them.
I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you, Mama.
You can't help me right now. I'm using something sharp. Okay, so I'm just gonna score them. So I'm gonna use my, oh, I forgot what it's called. This tool. It's pretty important. Oh, geez. It's pretty important that you cut your bread, because it lets the steam escape and lets it cook properly. I'm just going to do a spiral on this one.
Mama?
Hold on, kiddo. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go back around again and make sure it's nice and cut. And you can use like an X-Acto blade for this. It doesn't have to be a spiral. It could just be a line, but you just gotta have it cut to let the steam escape. And it'll help your bread rise while it's baking a lot better. It lets the steam escape. I've said that like 4 times, that's okay. All right, and this one I'm just gonna do this one a lot less fancy to show you. I'm just gonna do 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Just like that. Make sure it's nice and cut. Okay, and then while my Dutch oven is heating up in the oven, I'm gonna just I'm gonna sit these out and let them rise a little bit. And that's all for this step. Okay, so my next step is to pull out my Dutch oven. Oh, it's hot. Which has been heating up for 30 minutes. You can tell because the color is very different. Nope. I'm just gonna put this lid over here. Try not to have a tarnation out of myself. Okay, and I'm gonna scoop up my bread with this tool right here. Okay. I'm going to scoop on my bread with this tool, and I'm just going to drop it in the Dutch oven. Just like that. I'm gonna put the lid back on, and then I'm gonna bake it for 30 minutes.
Mama?
Hold on, please.
I have to tell you how much. I have to tell him how much, Mama. How much of it.
Okay, now I'm gonna pull the bread out after 30 minutes and check to see if it's done. There you go. I'm probably gonna bake this loaf for a few more minutes just so it can crisp up a bit more, but this is it. It's all done.